Welcome to Nation of Glory, where every journey is explored from its roots, every rise is examined through the moments that shaped it, and every legend is understood through the steps that carried them to greatness. When we talk about Roman Reigns, the world often remembers the dominance, the world championships, the bloodline era, the tribal chief, and the unmatched control he held over WWE for years. But long before he reached that level of power, before his name became synonymous with world title supremacy, there was a chapter in his career defined by a mid-card championship that played a far more important role than most fans realize. This title became a stepping stone, a testing ground, and a foundational moment that helped carve the path Roman Reigns would later walk as a world-level superstar. It wasn't the biggest title in the company, but it held a significance that would shape the performer he was becoming and the champion he would one day be. At that stage of his journey, Roman was still rising, still building his identity, still forming the presence that the WWE Universe would eventually recognize as one of the most commanding of the modern era. The mid-card championship he held during this period gave him an opportunity he truly needed, an opportunity to connect with the audience, to compete regularly at a high level, and to craft a ring style that allowed him to stand out from the rest of the roster. He wasn't the final product yet. He wasn't the tribal chief. He wasn't the head of the table. He wasn't the unstoppable force who tore through every challenger for years on end. But he was learning. He was building. He was evolving. Holding that title meant Roman had to defend it against different types of opponents with different strengths and different approaches. It forced him to adjust, experiment, and discover which skills came naturally and which ones he needed to sharpen. This era brought a crucial shift from potential to performance. Roman had always been seen as someone with the tools to make it big, but this title reign gave him the chance to show he could handle the pressure of responsibility. It put him in a position where he needed to deliver consistently, not just on big events but on weekly programming, and that consistency became one of the most important traits that later defined his career at the top. During this period, Roman Reigns began to find the rhythm that would help him ascend to world title level. His confidence grew with every match he defended the title. His awareness inside the ring sharpened. His ability to read his opponents improved. And most importantly, he started to understand how to command the ring, the crowd, and the moment. This title reign gave him the platform to experiment with pacing, storytelling, and physicality. He didn't just win matches, he learned how to guide them, control them, and elevate them. That kind of growth doesn't happen in a single moment, it happens in chapters like this one, where the pressure is balanced, the expectations are high, and the opportunity to prove oneself is constant. This mid-card title also played a major role in shifting the audience's perception of Roman. Fans began to see him as more than a powerhouse, more than a member of the Shield, and more than a rising star being pushed toward the top. They began to see him as someone capable of holding gold, representing a division, and carrying the weight of responsibility with intensity and pride. He wasn't protected behind the presence of a team or supported by a storyline designed to ease him into the spotlight. He was standing on his own, defending a championship on his own, and proving himself on his own. That independence helped shape the Roman Reigns the world would eventually fear and respect. There were moments during this reign that tested him more deeply than some of his future world title matches. Opponents pushed him to adapt, and the pressure to maintain credibility as a champion forced him to expand his in-ring approach. He learned how to take control when a match felt too fast, how to slow things down when they needed more emotion, and how to deliver explosive moments that made fans believe in him even when they weren't sure. These lessons became essential parts of his championship identity later in his career. Without this phase, his journey to becoming a multi-time world champion might have looked different. It might not have carried the same confidence, the same understanding, or the same absolute certainty that Roman Reigns belonged at the top. It was also during this period that Roman discovered the emotional side of championship wrestling. He began to understand that titles were more than physical objects. They were symbols, symbols of trust, symbols of responsibility, symbols of growth. This mid-card title became a badge of evolution for him, something that showed he was ready to step into bigger arenas and bigger opportunities. Fans who watched him during this time witnessed a clear shift. He carried himself with purpose, every week looking more like the future world champion he was destined to become. Even his rivalries during this period had a rawness and unpredictability that shaped the way he would later approach more intense, high-stakes world title storylines. One of the major impacts of this championship reign was the way it helped Roman develop endurance, not just physical endurance, but storytelling endurance. He learned how to build a match from the ground up, how to create tension, how to hold a crowd's attention, and how to deliver at the peak moment when everything mattered. These are the skills that later fueled his ability to carry hour-long main events during the Tribal Chief era. Skills like these aren't formed during world title matches alone, They are formed during journeys like this one, where repetition, pressure, and constant growth combine to create something lasting. As Roman held this title, he also began to establish the presence that would one day define his world-level dominance. He carried himself like a champion even before he reached the mountain's peak. He moved with confidence, spoke with conviction, and entered the ring with an aura that felt different from most mid-card champions. Fans could sense that he was outgrowing the division even while he was elevating it. That's when WWE knew he was ready. That's when fans knew he was ready. And that's when Roman himself began to feel that he was not just chasing world-level status, he was approaching it step by step. When the time finally came for Roman Reigns to step into the world title picture, his growth was undeniable. This mid-card title reign had molded him into a complete performer with the maturity, awareness, and competitive intensity needed to carry the company. He didn't suddenly appear at the top. He climbed, he grew, he learned, and he earned the position that would later turn him into one of the most dominant champions in modern WWE history. That journey didn't begin with a world championship. It began with this mid-card title, the one that paved the way, the one that shaped his rise, and the one that helped transform potential into power. Roman's career is filled with legendary chapters, but this one remains one of the most important because it shows the foundation of everything he later achieved. It reveals the early work, the early battles, and the early growth that fans sometimes overlook but that played a vital role in shaping one of the most iconic careers of his generation. Without this title, Roman's evolution would not have been as complete, his dominance would not have been as convincing, and his rise would not have carried the same sense of inevitability. Thank you for joining this deep exploration of a crucial chapter in Roman Reigns' rise to greatness. Stay connected for more legendary journeys and unforgettable stories right here on Nation of Glory. Don't forget to follow, subscribe, and like.